Lesson 11. Physics. Hello fellow game designers, welcome to the Wicked Cat Unity Introduction course. Today we continue our lesson on the several types of colliders the Unity engine has to offer. On the last video we talked about the box collider and the sphere collider. Let's now cover the remaining colliders. Step 5. Capsule Collider. The Capsule Collider is made of two half-spheres that are joined together by a cylinder, and it has the same shape as the capsule primitive. This collider is very useful for complex objects or characters. As matter of fact, this is the collider used by Unity's character controller. As you can see, it has several parameters in common with the last two colliders we saw. Is-trigger allows the collider to be only used for triggering events. And material allows you to define a physics behavior for the collider. Next, you have some new parameters that are specific to this collider. Center allows you to set the position of the collider in the object's local space. On radius, you set the radius of the collider's local width. Height is the total height of the collider. And finally, on direction you set the axis of the capsule's lengthwise orientation in the object's local space. This can either be X, Y, or Z. Step 6. Mesh Collider. This collider is a little bit different from the last ones. Instead of using the shape of a primitive, the mesh collider takes the mesh of the game object and builds its collider based on that mesh. It is far more accurate for collision detection than using primitives for complicated meshes. As for parameters, we have 5. The first two, is-trigger and material, work exactly like on the other colliders. Next, you have a new parameter, convex. If enabled, this mesh collider will collide with other mesh colliders. Keep in mind that convex mesh colliders are limited to 255 triangles. If smooth sphere collisions is enabled, collision mesh normals are smoothed. This parameter should be enabled on smooth surfaces in order to make spheres roll smoother. Finally, on mesh, you set the reference to the mesh to be used for collisions. Step 7. Terrain Collider. The terrain collider is a specific type of collider that can only be used by terrains. As the mesh collider, the terrain collider component will build the collider based on the terrain. Here you have 3 parameters, the is-trigger, which allows the collider to be used only for triggering events. The terrain data, where you set a reference to your terrain game object in order for the component to build the collider. And you can also enable Create Tree Colliders. When this feature is enabled, the engine will generate colliders around the trees you painted onto the terrain. This was our second video on Unity 3D colliders. On the next video, we cover the last collider, the wheel collider. This collider is specific for the wheels of grounded vehicles, and a little bit more complex, so we will dedicate a full video to it. If you have any doubts or feedback, leave it on the comment section below. Until next time, and keep doing awesome games.